We can no longer let the people in power decide. Blah, blah, blah. Did you hear me? What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. But it starts with blah. When do we want it? Blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear. What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. What do you think, sir? They say blah. When do we want it? Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but just look at the numbers. We can no longer let the people in power decide. What do you think? Hope it's not blah, blah, blah. Of course, we need constructive dialogue, but they now have 30 years of blah, blah, blah. They invite therapeutic young people to meetings like this to pretend that they are listening. This is not about some expensive, politically correct green act. Blah, blah, blah. There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Build back better. Blah, blah, blah. Need economy. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Did you hear me? What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. But it starts with blah. When do we want it? Blah, blah, blah. This is all we hear. What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. What do you think, sir? They say blah. When do we want it? Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Fighting climate change calls for innovation, cooperation. They say they want solutions, and they're not holding leaders accountable for their action, or rather inaction. Blah, blah. We need to walk the talk. Blah, 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 blah. If this is what they consider to be climate action, then we don't want it. Blah, blah, blah. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Blah, blah, blah. There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Build back better. Blah, blah, blah. Need economy. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Did you hear me? What do we want? Blah, blah, blah. But it starts with blah. When do we want it? Blah, blah, blah.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Here we go. Hour 1. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination. Have no fear, you will be safely traveling with us. We are streaming to you live on audio through the Truth Frequency Radio Network, which is where the Truth Freaks hang out, and we are not afraid to let our Truth Freak flag fly. Tuning in here will treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. We're also streaming to you live on video, several platforms: Foxhole, Twitch, Facebook D Live, Twitter, YouTube, and also Rumble and Rockfin. So it doesn't matter what platform you tune into, it's all live, it's all free. And it is Memorial Day weekend. Thank you so much for attending on your busy loafing. I had fun. Friday night was my birthday. I went out to Angry Ales and had some chicken wings, went across the street, down under the ground into Jeff's Bucket, and we sang karaoke till about midnight, and then I came home. And Saturday was a very relaxing day, as is today. So I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover tonight. I will be monitoring all the chats, including Foxhole. Let me make sure Foxhole's turned on. I forgot to do that. I got Rockfin started, but I didn't get this started. So let me do that. And that way I can monitor the chat in Foxhole, because we have great friends there. It's a fantastic platform if you've never been to it. It looks great. It works great. Pilled does a great job putting that together, and we appreciate their work so much. Let's begin. I want to talk a little bit about the justice war. Now, you hear me talk about, war is justice denied, and justice delayed is justice denied. And you hear me talk about the reign of the judges, which is part of the justice superstructure. But there's a radical left-wing group out there, and they're laying plans and making their plans known that they intend to shut down the Supreme Court in response to a leaked opinion that overturns Roe v. Wade. It's called #ShutdownDC. And they're planning to actually physically block the streets adjoining the court to prevent the justices and their staff from getting to their chambers. Now, I don't know if they could do that because they have tunnels and stuff, so they probably get there anyway. But organizers acknowledge their operations go beyond constitutionally protected activity, let's put it that way. And they reference the likelihood of arrests and clashes with law enforcement Tuesday night, and I wonder how many FBI agents are going to be in that crowd. I wonder how many photographs are going to be taken, how many phones are going to be tracked, how many people are actually going to end up in the dungeon floor below the J6 prisoners. Don't you? I'll quote, #ShutdownDC says, one of our goals would be to expand the current political crisis by shutting down the Supreme Court. The group planned the blockade for Monday, June 13th, the day when the court will likely hand down opinions. #ShutdownDC is concocting its ploy amid continued concerns over the Supreme Court's security and that of the justices following the unprecedented task. And by the way, that violation of security extends to the justices' homes. Yes, this group actually published the home addresses of these justices, and they've been protesting outside their homes, which is a felony. It's a felony. Once you step on their grass, you can be arrested. And I don't know how long the penalty is, but we protect the justices. And I'm just going to wonder how many arrests are going to be made. I may watch the protest myself. Anyway, the DHS's intelligence arm, which I think is an oxymoron, their intelligence arm circulated a memo early this month, and remarkably enough, it warns of a sharp rise in threats to the High Court. I don't know where they would have got that news. Maybe CNN, I don't know. Law enforcement is investigating violent threats from pro-abortion extremists. I'm glad they're finally calling them pro-abortion extremists instead of pro-choice, against members of the court as well as the court building itself. The Tuesday night briefing included more than 60 activists and was led by 4 or 5 organizers. We don't know who their names are. Their identities have been concealed. I'll bet you the FBI knows. I'll bet you the DHS knows. I bet you they know where they went to school, how many weapons they have, and what their sexual preferences are. The presentation included a detailed tactical plan for blocking access to the court's underground parking garage, which is the primary entry and exit point for employees and justices. I think that's a great place to be arrested, don't you? The plan calls for demonstrators to obstruct 2 points near the court on 2nd Street and a third spot on A Street. I don't know if you've ever been to D.C., but A Street is like right there. It bisects 2nd Street directly behind the court building. And it's there's sidewalks on both sides, obviously, and there's hotels and everything. So it's a busy commuter thoroughfare. It goes right into Pennsylvania Avenue. So to coincide with the blockade, #ShutdownDC is planning a rally, which would also be known as an insurrection, right? Yes? Rally, insurrection. Well, I was there. There were 500,000 of them, and my friends were there. And that was a rally, but no, that's an insurrection. Kat, Forgot to close the door when you came in. Go close the door. Go. Cats, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Anyway, organizers describe the rally as a low-risk location in contrast to the blockade posts where they anticipate arrests and skirmishes with the police. Now, I don't know what they really are expecting, skirmishes with the police. You know, smoke, tear gas, pepper spray, pepper bullets, clubs. How about zip ties, huh? How about we stack them and rack them and haul them off by the busload? What do you say? It's possible we will see many different law enforcement agencies. And by the way, this is a little different announcement than the rally January 6th, 2021. We went there to celebrate. We went there to sing. We went there to meet one another and to wave flags and to be proud of our country. And yes, to lament the larceny that took place on November 3rd and the farce that was going to take place in February with the fake virtual Joe and his gang of criminals being sworn into office. We went there to lament that. There was no violence. There was no violence of any kind from us. Oh, there was from the FBI agents that were inside our crowd. There were from Antifa who were dressed like us, looked like us, but they weren't us. No. None of the organizers, by the way, made actual threats against particular justices, but they encouraged the threats. They opened a briefing by warning that their tactics are illegal and readily acknowledging their goal is to massively disrupt a third branch of the government. That, my friends, is insurrection. I quote, "In this space, we may talk about some action ideas that stretch the bounds of constitutionality or constitutionally protected speech." And, of course, they had a slideshow, and, you know, it was quite organized. And, of course, they coached them, you know, avoid saying anything that you don't want to see appear on Fox News. Because I guarantee you they're going to be reporters there. They're going to be cell phones recording every microsecond of that group. And it's going to be streaming live. Who knows? The briefing highlighted the group's connections for other liberal judicial groups, which mobilized following the leak of the draft opinion. You have to understand what's at stake here. It is not a woman's right to an abortion. It is not her access to an abortion. That is not what this protest is about. Keep this straight. Keep things clear. Don't be deceived. This protest is about preserving a billion-dollar butcher. And this billion-dollar butcher collects money from Congress that they send to them, $500 million a year in taxpayer funds, and the re-laundering of that money in the form of $50 million that goes back to the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. That's what they're trying to protect. This group, #ShutDownDC, is trying to protect that $50 million annual cash flow. That's what this is about. Do not be deceived. One organizer said that #ShutDownDC is behind demonstrations at the homes of the justices, thought to have joined the leaked opinion overturning Roe, a separate entity called Ruth Sent Us. In other words, you know who I'm talking about, the founder of Planned Parenthood, named for the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, not the founder, has claimed responsibility for those events a sign that the two groups are closely aligned. Of course, Ruth is not here to speak for herself. I doubt she would condone them blocking the Supreme Court. We were the first to hold an action at Brett Kavanaugh's house, and then recently we held an action at Samuel Alito's house, the organizer bragged. She added that she was heartened to see new individuals joining their effort at Tuesday's presentation. Well, let's see, that's 3 counts, 15 years apiece? That's 45 years in prison. I think the organizer should leave now. This is a crisis moment for democracy and for our rights. So we need as many new folks leveling up in their mobilization as possible, an organizer said. Translation. This is a crisis moment to protect $50 million a year of taxpayer money and who knows how much money in fetal body parts that Planned Parenthood and the clinics sell throughout the world. It's a lot of money. As I said, they are the billion-dollar butcher. That's what this is all about. That's where the money comes from. And that's who the organizers are being paid by. Another organizer highlighted an upcoming June summit on the Supreme Court hosted by a left-wing dark money group called Demand Justice. Yeah, I like the sound of that. You always pick my favorite call signs and twist them, don't you? The group declined to say whether it is connected with hashtag #ShutdownDC, because they don't want to go to jail too, or whether it approves of its plans. I wouldn't admit it. The Supreme Court's Public Information Office declined to comment for this story. I think that's probably wise as well. Hashtag #ShutdownDC is sharpening focus on House Democrats who have yet to approve enhanced security measures for the court. Senators, we have another John Cornyn, Republican of Texas. Chris Coons, Democrat from Delaware, spearheaded a security bill in the Senate that passed without any opposition earlier this month. Got to protect those 9 justices and their staff. And the House, however, because it's ruled by the radical drunkard Nancy Pelosi, has yet to do anything. Nobody's going to step out of line. Nobody's going to say a word. Why? Because it's $50 million a year. That's why. Quote, this should not be about politics, but about ensuring the safety of the 9 individuals on the Supreme Court. Close quote. A senior House staffer who works on domestic security said, it's not a matter of safety for Speaker Pelosi. It's political theater with real ramifications. That's the justice war. We're going to see it unfold in the next couple of weeks. We will cover it as closely as we can, as fairly as we can. And of course, we will cut through the crap and tell you the truth of what is going on. It's all about the money. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with actual women's rights. It has to do with the money. And the money is for a very small elite group. They don't just give that money out to everybody. It's to make sure people like Sheila Jackson Lee and Maxine Waters are reelected over and over again. That's why they don't have to go out and campaign. They don't have to go out and campaign because that blood money pays for their office. Why? Because they're a rubber stamp. They're a rubber stamp for the global syndicate. That's what they do. That's why they keep getting reelected. Let's see if we can fix that in November, by the way. What do you say? All right. Next story, let's talk about gas. Everybody's paying for it. Have we broken another record this weekend? Yes, we have. As a matter of fact, yes, we have. I paid over $4.90 a gallon for gas in North Carolina. That's crazy. If you would have told me when Donald Trump was president that one day we'd be paying $5 a gallon for gas, I would have told you crazy. There's no way we're going to burn off this glut. And by the way, you know what? We haven't. We haven't burned off the glut. The glut is still there. Those tanks, they're still full of oil. The glut is still there. So why has the price gone up? I'm going to talk about that. Here we go. So are you ready for the central bank digital currency, the CBDC? You know, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Well, this new digital money that's being proposed by Klaus Schwab and his global syndicate is designed to track and authorize your every move. So are you ready to be integrated with your car's body control module, the BCM? That's what controls your engine and the mixture and all of that. It's a little computer in your car. You probably have 5 of them, including an electronic control module for your transmission. They could actually integrate this and stop your car if you travel more than 5 kilometers from your home. Yeah, the program is already being tested. How about this? The Minister of Power and Energy of Sri Lanka announced a couple of days ago that the socialist government would implement the use of a mobile phone app to monitor how much gasoline, diesel, and other fuel citizens purchase to prevent hoarding. Minister Kanchana Wijesakara claimed that police nationwide were already testing the app, designed to share real-time data with filling stations island-wide so that drivers could not evade national rations, according to Sri Lankan news outlet Ada Dharana. The Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka is currently undergoing an unprecedented economic crisis that has caused shortages of gasoline, diesel, liquefied petroleum gas, basic medicines, food, water, and electricity. That's a hell of a crisis. In addition to nearly every other basic good, protests against incumbent President Gotabaya Rajapaksa have resulted in the resignation of every member of his cabinet except the president, including the brother and former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and several other members of the ruling family. A combination of poor decision-making regarding taking predatory loans out with China, which they're trying to do globally, by the way, banning chemical fertilizers and instead relying on food imports, corruption, and the collapse of the tourism industry during the Chinese coronavirus pandemic have left the country absolutely destitute. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, who, or I guess it would be that is very hard to say. Wickremesinghe, who preceded and succeeded Mahinda Rajapaksa, announced in mid-May that Sri Lanka had simply run out of fuel. The next couple of months will be the most difficult ones of our lives. I have no desire to hide the truth and to lie to the public. Rajapaksa government has since succeeded in importing small quantities of vehicle fuels, resulting in extremely long lines at gasoline stations and limits on how much gasoline each purchaser can buy at once. Government officials have pivoted to blaming hoarders for the shortages. Whatever. Announcing on Thursday that police had arrested 137 people for allegedly inappropriately purchasing gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. How many people live in Sri Lanka? Way more than 137. What the crap? Anyway, the mobile app, it was announced on Thursday, would reportedly allow for more such police actions, more arrests. Yeah, can't arrest a society there. I'm just telling you. So anyway, according to the lawmaker, the mobile application developed by the IT department of Sri Lanka Police is being tested at multiple locations in the country at present, Ada Dharana reported. Taking to his official Twitter account, Minister Wijesakara said the number plate details of the consumers at the gasoline pump will be entered and will be shared with other app users. Oh, I see. They're going to turn the people against the people who are buying too much gas. Ooh, that could be bad. Presumably, the application will notify a gas station immediately if the car seeking to buy fuel had purchased any in the too recent past. Doing too much driving, gotta stop driving. The energy minister reportedly did not inform the public of any privacy features the app comes equipped with, if any. I wonder why they didn't inform them of that privacy issue. The application is reminiscent of the use of phone programs to surveil citizens' purchases in other socialist countries. Where would that be? Oh, yeah, Venezuela, for example. The government implemented the use of the app known as the Fatherland Card. Ooh. Reportedly built by? Nope. Wasn't Microsoft. No, it wasn't Facebook. It was China. China's ZTE Communications Company. And mandatory for citizens to buy basic food, fuel, and other goods, as well as for healthcare and other government services. Tuesday of last week, Sri Lankans are only allowed to purchase 10,000 rupees worth of gasoline at any given time. That's 24 gallons of octane, the cheapest, 92, by the way. That's regular, cheapest variety. While the government attempts to curb alleged hoarding, local news reports indicate that various mishaps by those in charge of obtaining and distributing fuel and also contributing to shortages. And I don't know where the shortages are coming from. I don't know who is actually holding back the fuel. But we saw this happen in the 70s in the United States. I had friends that owned oil wells, and they received letters from the petroleum companies. This would be, I think, in the fall of 1972. Fall of 1972, they started receiving letters. And the letters said, we're going to have to cap your oil well, so don't expect any division orders for the foreseeable future. We have too much oil. We have to cut back in production. And so we're sorry, but we have to cap this well. I promise. That's what the letter said. So Jimmy Carter gets elected in November. He comes on in February of 1973, and what is the first thing that he does? Oh my God, we have an energy crisis. Interest rates go through the roof. Loan rates go through the roof. Debt goes through the roof. And gas prices tripled, which just about killed the economy. I mean, of course, we laugh about it now, 75 cents a gallon for gas. But you got to remember, we were paying like 31 cents a gallon for gas or 29 cents a gallon for gas. It was crazy to see it go up that much. And, you know, people didn't make that much money. I was in the Air Force. I made $600 a month. $600 a month. $150 a week. That was it. That was money in those days. But it doesn't go very far when you're paying almost $1 a gallon for gas. So on Friday, Sri Lankan News first reported that one gas station accidentally switched diesel and gasoline fuels, meaning fuel tanks of vehicles had to be emptied because they were filled with incompatible fuel. I don't know if you ever tried to start a gas-powered car on kerosene, but it won't start. And if you start a diesel vehicle on gasoline, oh, it'll start, but it'll come apart like a daisy smack with a 9-iron. Yeah, you can mix gas with your diesel a little bit, like maybe 10%. If it's really cold in the wintertime, you can get away with it because it kind of thins out the diesel and helps the pump a little easier. But you can't do that. So this one person said, because my vehicle was not moving, I went all the way up to Coach Chikade and turned around and came back. When I came back, oil started pouring out from all four sides. I was unable to move it. In other words, his engine was blown. An oil tanker truck also overturned on Friday, carrying 13,200 liters of gasoline while transporting fuel from the capital. First News did not indicate. Oh, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. TFR is running their commercials, and we will take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Here's the power in good communication. When what you say is only the tip of the iceberg of all you know, that's when communications becomes powerful. When what you say is only a portion of all that you know because you've gotten ready for this moment, this time, this occasion. I'm sure we've all been around some people who very quickly told us more than they knew. Didn't take them but a short period of time to run out of illustrations, to exhaust all their stories, probably meaning great lack of preparation, great lack of deliberately getting ready. Now, it is possible in some respects to prepare for life just by accident. You know, life does teach us some things by accident. There are some things you can learn by just careening from wall to wall and stumbling from day to day and staggering from week to week. I mean, you can learn some things that way. But the other 99% of what you need to know has got to be on purpose. Preparation on purpose. Good
From the dawn
phrase.
of man, we have turned to nature to help attain balance within ourselves. But somewhere, we lost our way. Western culture is once again remembering the healing benefits of CBD, the non-psychoactive component of the hemp plant. That's why more and more people who use CBD report relief from inflammation and chronic pain, balanced blood sugar and cardiovascular, relief from muscle tensions, tremors, migraine, headaches, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on. The big question is, where do you get it? Life is a 99% pure CBD oil made with all organic ingredients, and it's available to TFR listeners worldwide. If you use coupon code TFR at checkout, you'll get $5 towards your order. Head on over to ialife.com now. That's AYA life.com.
Millennia. Mankind has been searching for answers to the big questions, such as, where did the universe come from? Where did we come from? Why are we here? Are we alone? And just what the heck is the Sasquatch all about? I can't promise you answers, and neither can the Woo Crew, but they invite you to join them Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, midnight in the UK, for Freaky Friday, exclusively on Truth Frequency Radio. Spirituality, multiverse, quantum mechanics, the occult, and so much conspiracy analysis that it will make your mind melt. Take my word for it. Freaky Friday. It's more than a show. It's a way of life. I am Stephen Hawking, and I am proud to be a Wookiee.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
By the way, I just want to let you know this gas app, this tracking app, it is possible to beat the system. If you drive a pickup truck, not that hard to do. When you go to gas up, drop your tailgate, covering your rear license plate, and get your fuel with cash. Okay? Buy your fuel with cash and cover your license plate. That will stop the tracking app right there. If you have a car, there are a couple of ways to do this. One, you can pull into the gas station into a parking space, open your trunk, drop a towel over your license plate, close the trunk lid, pull up, gas up, pull away, put the towel back in your trunk, and drive away. That will stop the photo tracking app from taking your license plate and tying it to your gas purchase at that pump. It's just a way to do it. I'm just saying, if you want to beat this system, there is a way to beat it. All right, let's talk a little bit about mind games. I don't mean mind games. I mean floating sea mines. Russian President Vladimir Putin has disclosed to the world, and he does so every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day, in English and Russian, that there is a 3-mile wide, 80-mile long corridor that's wide open from Ukraine to the rest of the world. So they can ship their wheat, their exports, whatever they want to do. Everything is free to go, not being impeded at all. The only reason those ships are stuck in port, unable to transport 22 million tons of wheat, by the way, and there's more coming next month, is because it is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky who is saying these ships shall not move. Okay? And It is not the Russians that have mined the Black Sea. It's the Ukrainians. And Putin has demanded that Ukraine should remove their sea mines from areas near its ports to allow safe shipping, because these mines are coming loose. They're old. They're post-World War II mines. They're floating toward Turkey. Turkey has to mess with them. And Putin made this statement a couple of days ago in his phone call with Austria's Chancellor, Karl Nehammer, according to the Kremlin readout of the conversation. It said that Putin and Nehammer had a detailed exchange of views on issues regarding food security, with Putin rejecting Western claims that Russia's actions have exacerbated a global food crisis. That is fake news. The Kremlin noted that Putin emphasized that attempts to blame Russia for difficulties regarding shipments of agricultural products to global markets are completely unfounded. It added that the Russian leader gave a detailed explanation of the real roots behind those problems that emerged, in particular because of the U.S. and the European Union sanctions against Russia. It is the U.S. and the other Western allies that have rejected the Russian demand for the sanctions to be lifted and accused Moscow of blocking grain supplies from Ukraine to global markets, and that is fake news. Just wanted to let you know. And by the way, you can tune in if you want to. It's broadcast on VHF and UHF. It is every 15 minutes, and it is in Russian and English, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These ships are free to go anytime they want and in safety. All right, let's talk a little bit about gravity. You know what gravity is, right? I think we should repeal it because it's holding us down. I wrestle with it every day because I weigh 18 stones and I have to pack it around all the time. I'm working on it. My goal is to get to 16 stones. If I can get to 16 stones, man, I'll be in fighting weight for sure. Out in the dark depths of space, our model, what? The secret to life is clean glassware and conversion factors. A stone is 14 pounds. Do the math. Out in the dark depths of space, our models of the universe get messy. A new study looking at the ultra-diffuse dwarf galaxy, AGC 114905, has revived a controversial theory. Well, actually, it's not a theory. It's a hypothesis of gravity. And because we don't have enough facts to make it a theory, but it is interesting and it is a good hypothesis. And it gives us a lot more questions than answers about what's really making our galaxies tick. And it all starts with something we used to plug into the standard model to make it work. Because when we look at the motion of galaxies and clusters of galaxies and superclusters of galaxies, it is a lot of mass, but it's also a long way away from one another. So, and we know the laws of gravity in the sense that gravity decreases with the square of the distance. And we're talking about incredible distances. So we have logicked that there's a lot of mass missing from the equation. Because when we try to calculate why these massive collections of mass in the universe behave the way that they do, it requires more mass locally to tie these things together than what we can actually detect. So we created dark matter. It may be very bright matter, we just can't see it. I don't know. But when we plug this in, it sort of answers the question of why these massive collections of stars and planets and everything rotate around each other. However, we have never directly detected it. We only hypothesize that it's there. It's sort of like, we see the bucket swinging around a central point, but the person holding onto the rope that's swinging that bucket is in the dark, and we can't see them. We know something's there holding onto that rope, swinging that bucket around, because we can see it go by, but we don't know what it is. We don't know if it's a robot or if it's a human or what it is, but we know something's there. So we hypothesize about what it is. So, it's not a bad idea to look at some alternative options. You know what I'm saying? Just in case we're never, ever really able to gather up a cup of dark matter. One alternative hypothesis to look at dark matter is called modified Newtonian dynamics. And we call it MOND for short, modified Newtonian dynamics. Now, there's a couple different ways of looking at the universe, Newtonian and Hamiltonian, and I don't want to get into all the details there, but basically one is the difference and one is the sum of all of the energy in the universe. So we're talking about the Milgromian dynamics framework. And this hypothesis, it's not ancient. It goes back only to 1983. And it was developed by a physicist whose name was Mordechai Milgrom. That's why we call it Milgromian dynamics. And it suggests that we don't need dark matter to fill in the universe's gravity gaps. If we calculate the gravitational forces experienced by stars in the outer galactic regions in a different manner to how Newtonian laws suggest, and to test this idea, which involves working with proportionality to the star's radius or the centripetal acceleration. Again, I'm talking about the bucket being swung by the rope, the centripetal acceleration. We need to be looking for the speeds of galaxies, specifically the weird ones like ultra-diffuse galaxies. And, they make good models. And remember, speed is relative. Like, if you're on the freeway, you're doing 80 miles an hour, but everybody else is doing 80 miles an hour, you don't really feel the speed, right? You don't look at the signs going by or the white stripes going by. You look at yourself relative to the other cars, right? Which over a distance of 10 miles or so, you might change 100 yards, maybe. You see, the speed is relative to everything else. And in space, there are no white stripes. There are no stationary signs going by. Everything in the universe is in motion relative to everything else. You could be geotropic about this or biblical about this and say, oh, that's easy. Earth is the center of the universe and everything revolves around us. Except anybody with a telescope can tell that's not true. We are not the center of the universe. We're not even the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So we can't really look out into the universe and say, oh, this is going fast and this is going slow. Compared to what? Compared to what? See, everything is relative. So we go way out and we look at these ultra diffuse galaxies. And they're very faint. They're kind of, ugly ducklings of galaxies. They're not big and beautiful like the Milky Way galaxy. And they have a habit of not really, acting like a galaxy should. For example, some ultra-diffuse galaxies seem to be made almost entirely of dark matter, whilst others are almost completely dark matter-less. And this is where AGC 114905 comes in, as I mentioned at the beginning of the story. The ultra-diffuse dwarf galaxy, it's around 250 million light years away, had recently been looked at in detail in a paper published in 2021 investigating how fast it spins. And we're pretty sure at the center of every galaxy is probably a supermassive spinning black hole. And by supermassive, I mean it probably holds hundreds of thousands of suns, as far as mass in it. And the one thing that we do know about black holes, to conserve momentum in as small a space as possible, it's spinning at its maximum speed based on the amount of mass that's in it. It can't spin any faster than it's spinning because it's as small as it can get. And yet the gravity is so close together, so packed in close together, that even photons of light cannot escape. However, it creates a kind of frame dragging funnel that captures all the stars in a galaxy. In fact, it may be the gravity engine that lights up all the stars in that galaxy. So dark matter, yeah, because we can't see it, but it's still mass. Even though it's not putting off light, it's mass. So the team found that this diffuse galaxy, 114-905, actually spins very slow. Slow enough that not only did they not see dark matter to confirm the models, but the rotation curve of the galaxy also cast huge doubt on this Mond framework that we're talking about. It doesn't fit with either hypothesis. And the fact that it exists is really exciting because it makes, we theoretical physicists have to answer questions we didn't even know existed yet. This very low reported rotational speed of the galaxy is inconsistent with both the Mond and the stranded approach with dark matter, because we think there's a bunch of missing matter in the universe, so we make it up. But only Mond is able to get around this apparent contradiction. The new paper has an undebunked, and this is as of 2021, so here we are in 2022. It hasn't been debunked yet. I'm not doing it. I maybe have a dog in the fight, but I think this guy's probably on the right track, suggesting that the issue isn't with Mond, but instead it's with the inclination of the galaxy itself. In other words, the way that it's tilted relative to Earth. When we look at galaxies far away in the depth of space, because they're kind of flat in the sense that we know there's some mass in the center, it's creating a gravitational disk upon which ride all the visible matter that we see, and so it creates a kind of plate that we look at in terms of galaxy. If we're looking at it straight on like this, it's difficult to see everything that's in it. If it turns like this and we can see it spinning, like a circle in front of us, we can track it pretty easy. Unfortunately, we can't get repositioned to look at 114-905. It looks elliptical, suggesting that we're looking at the galaxy from an angle, because a circle, when you tilt it sideways, it looks like an ellipse. So using the stimulations, researchers now suggest the galaxy could appear elliptical even when it's facing us straight on. That's very strange. Very strange, because it should be symmetrical. A change in the angle of the galaxy to us would also change how fast the galaxy is rotating, making all the Mond math add up after all. Our simulations show that the inclination of 114-905 might be significantly less than reported, which would mean the galaxy is actually rotating much faster than people think, in line with Mond expectations. And this comes from a physicist whose name was Indranil Banik, and he's from the University of St. Andrews. We bring in a lot of these visa scientists from other countries, from India specifically, and I have to tell you, these visas are bringing in people that are so brilliant. India has more A students than we have students. So when we bring these people in, what we call the genius visa, the H-1B, when we bring people in on the H-1B genius visa, these are people that are so brilliant that they could start industries, not companies, industries, with dozens, hundreds of businesses serving that industry. That's how smart they are. And this guy, Indranil Banik, from the University of St. Andrews, heralds from that educational pool. It's still an open question. And we don't know whether this new paper or the 2021 paper is going to be crowned victorious, or at least most correct for the moment. But if this new finding holds, it seems that the Mond framework might live on for another day, as wild as Mond might be, with dark matter still elusive and many other questions still to be answered. We need all the options we can get. And good to see everybody in the chat room, by the way. Trucker Will is out there, says can't find fuel, and he's been to several truck stops. That worries me a little bit. I'm wondering if they're all the same brand of truck stop or different truck stops, because I know if you go to QT, they have their own trucks, they have their own tanks. Same with Love, same with Pilot. You know, Pilot owns a lot of places. They own TNA, they own... what's the other big one that's out there? I want to say Love's, yes, of course, but there was another one out there that they own as well. They're a privately held company, and they have their own refineries and everything, and they do very well. I'm surprised that there's no fuel out there. And Alan Holman's out there. He heralds from Truth Frequency. It's always good to see him out there. And Kelly Brooks is out there. What a great name. Thanks so much. And thanks for all the birthday wishes, too. I think I'm almost halfway there. Another 8 years, I'll be halfway through, and then the race is on. Then we really have to start doing some exciting things. Bryce is out there, and Mr. Choney's out there, and of course, Original Old Dog, which we're crafting a plan. We're crafting a plan to get to Shasta. It involves me flying to Salt Lake City and then driving 10 hours one way, and then hanging out at Shasta, making presentations and meeting all the people there, then driving 10 hours back to Salt Lake City, and then flying home. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I got another opportunity, a guy that manages chartered jets, and we're going to see if there's an empty leg going one way, which would be very cheap to fly for me, and whether I can get to it, whether it's from Greensboro or Charlotte Airport or one of the other nearby airports, and I could catch that and fly out to, say, Redding or something, or Sacramento, and rent a car. It might be feasible. There are ways to do it, but to tell you the truth, I'm kind of really looking forward to 20 hours with Old Dog. I think it would be the conversations, we'd have to record them, and then we'll just play them for the next couple of months on this program, because they'll be that good. They'll be that good, I promise. So good to see you all out there. Papa Susie's out there. Good, very good. Yes, that would be cool. That would be cool. All right, let's talk. How much time we got in this segment? Let me just double check my clock. Oh, we have 5 minutes. Yeah, we can do this. And who's on Foxhole? Oh, Govinda's out there. Keep True's out there. Brew 52's out there. And what is that? T23SKG. I don't know what that stands for, but yes, Buckminster. He says Bucky's. It's Buckminster Fuller. That's we used to call them Bucky balls or Bucky tubes. Things nano-constructed with carbon. Interesting little carriers out there. All right, let's talk a little about the speed of light in the next 5 minutes. Actually, twice the speed of light. As far as we know, it's not possible for a person to move twice the speed of light. In fact, theoretically, it's not possible for any object with the kind of mass you or I have to move faster than the speed of light even once. However, there are certain very strange particles traveling at twice the speed of light, and it might be possible, and it might send those particles back in time. Now, it's going to sound a little Star Trekky here, but hang with me, okay? Because one of our best physical theories at the moment is that the theory of relativity, which was developed by, along with other people, Mach and Heisenberg, Albert Einstein, and according to this theory, The speed of light operates as a universal speed limit on anything with mass. And it's because of E is equal to mc squared. If you look at the math, and as you approach the speed of light, mass approaches infinity, or energy approaches infinity, which is impossible. So to accelerate an object with mass, of course, you have to add energy, and it is asymptotic. That is to say, you approach the asymptote of maximum energy, and no matter how much you put into it, you can't get past it. Because the faster you go, the more energy you need, but you can't put any more into the equation. The equations of relativity tell us that anything with mass, regardless of how much mass it has, would require an infinite amount of energy to be accelerated to the speed of light. And if we work the standard model, which is matrix mathematics, but if we work the standard model, we don't live well with numbers like 0 or infinity. We don't like them, so we put in fudge factors to cancel those things out. And this is why infinity isn't possible. It's plausible the university in question here, the universe only contains a finite amount of energy, which is probably true. It's not an infinite amount of energy, so you couldn't reach it in this universe, right? If you need infinite energy, you don't want to consume all the galaxies and all the stars in it in order to make one particle move faster than the speed of light. So we invented something we call tachyons. Now, I know, no one's ever seen one or measured one or caught one, and the only time you've ever heard of them have been, on Star Trek Next Generation. Because it's just made up. But the universe speed limit applies, obviously, with anything with what we might call ordinary mass. There are, however, hypothetical particles called tachyons with a special kind of mass called imaginary mass. I know, you were going to say that, right? And there's no evidence that tachyons exist except in Star Trek scripts. But according to relativity, their possible existence can't be ruled out. I mean, you have to consider all possibilities. It doesn't mean that it's probable, but it is possible. Tachyons are one of the most interesting elements arising from Einstein's theory of special relativity. This 1905 theory is based on two postulates. Not one, two postulates. Nothing with mass moves faster than the speed of light, and physical laws remain the same in all non-inertial reference frames. A significant consequence of special relativity is the fact that space and time are united into a single entity, which we refer to as space-time. We'll be right back after this break. I know you're intrigued. I promise you won't be disappointed.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
and then a Republican president will make a triumphant return. Who will that be?
Donald Trump.
Who will that be?
President Trump.
Who will that be?
Donald Trump.
Who will that be?
President Trump.
We take great pride in our country. We teach the truth about history, and we reject left-wing lunacy.
Put the mask on! That's not funny! Put the mask on! Because ain't nobody having fun while the socialists are in charge.
With your help, we will take back the House. We will win the Senate, and then a Republican president will make a triumphant return. Who will that be?
Donald Trump.
Who will that be?
President Trump.
Who will that be?
Donald Trump.
Who will that be?
President Trump.
By the way, in Washington, D.C., Bernie is wearing mittens.
Hasbro now wants a gender-neutral Mr. Potato Head.
Fortunately,
Best is yet to come.
3, 2, 1.
Who will that be?
Donald Trump.
Who will that be?
President Trump.
Who will that be?
Donald Trump.
Who will that be?
You are now tuned into the truth frequency.
We are TFR. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Here we go, hour 2. Interesting conversation on neutrinos in the chat room. Neutrinos are very small particles. In fact, they could travel through about a light year of Earth without hitting anything. And they approach the planet Earth more easily to be measured from the South Pole. So there's a lab at the South Pole with a very special lead slab that will slow down neutrinos enough that we can measure them. And that's really the only lab that we have that can detect neutrinos accurately. There are some what we'll call gas trail detectors that can spot neutrinos going through the chamber. But yes, it's true. We're not solid enough to slow down a neutrino. Absolutely true. Our bodies are wide open. But lead is pretty well packed, and if you have several yards of it, chances are that a neutrino is going to slow down enough to be measured. It's just, it's the best we can do, the best instrument that we have. I don't know that they travel faster than the speed of light, because they do have some mass, although they're very, very small. So we were talking about space-time, and it means a particle's journey through speed is linked to its journey through time. And the term tachyon, it first entered scientific literature way back in 1967, in the last century. And it was a paper called Possibility of Faster Than Light Particles Opens in New Tab by Columbia University physicist Gerald Feinberg. Now, Feinberg posited that tachyonic particles would arise from a quantum field with imaginary mass, explaining why the first postulate of special relativity doesn't restrain their velocity. If their mass is imaginary, then it's not going to approach infinity, and it's not going to require an infinite amount of energy to make it go faster than the speed of light. And this would lead to two types of particles existing in the universe: bradyons that travel slower than light and basically make up all the matter that we see around us, and tachyons, which are traveling faster than light, according to the University of Pittsburgh. One of the key differences between these particle types is as energy is added to the bradyons, they speed up. But with tachyons, as energy is taken away, their speed increases. So some physicists believe that if tachyons do exist, they would constantly be traveling backwards in time. And that is why tachyons are associated with time travel in many science fiction books and movies, and of course, Star Trek. There are ideas that we might someday harness tachyons to build a time machine, at least to view through time, maybe not to travel through time. But for now, this remains a distant dream. We don't have the ability to detect potential tachyons. Tachyons are proposed to have an anti-mass, but this still constitutes mass energy. That means these particles should still have some gravitational effect. Possible highly sensitive detectors could spot this effect, but no one has built one yet. While the speed of light in a vacuum is a universal speed limit, particles have been made to travel faster than light in other mediums. When electrically charged particles are accelerated up to and beyond the speed of light in certain mediums like water, they release a form of radiation which we call Cherenkov radiation. It's kind of a blue haze, and you can see it. It puts off its own photons. And that means that if tachyons are electrically charged, one way of detecting them would be measuring Cherenkov radiation in the near vacuum of space. Now, it is disappointing that we can't travel faster than the speed of light, because the nearest star to us, other than the sun, is 4.35 light years away. So traveling at the speed of light, it would still take about 5 years to get there. The farthest star we've ever detected is 28 billion light years away, so forget about it. That said, relativity does allow for the existence of wormholes. A wormhole is a shortcut between any 2 points in space because it pulls space-time from two different places together in one spot. So it's kind of like two long funnels connecting at the skinny part. And the idea is that it's sort of like if I were holding a latex balloon in my fingers here. And I decided to take the latex balloon, let's see, move my fingers here, take the latex balloon between my fingers and push in from both sides until my fingers touched. That would simulate a black hole. Now, the latex balloon is space, but the tips of my fingers represent a black hole that's pulling both sides together to one spot. Now, if I just make the jump from one fingertip to the other fingertip, I don't have to go all the way across the balloon. Once that black hole is accessed, I'm basically at the other side. The paradox comes when we do what's called the billiard ball experiment, and it's just a thought experiment. But if you had one person on the other side of the black hole and you on this side of the black hole, and you decided to take a billiard ball and throw it through the black hole, theoretically, it would be accelerated, go through the event horizon, and come out the other side and be caught by the person on the other side. If that person then, being on the other side of the galaxy, let's say, were to take that billiard ball and throw it back to you, theoretically, it would arrive before you threw the billiard ball the first time. See, that's the paradox. Because the distance traveled is in a short enough time, it violates the speed of light. And so thus, the ball arrives at you before you threw it. Okay? That's the peculiar part. So despite the fact we can't genuinely travel faster than light, we can still try to imagine what it would be like to do so. In fact, our imagination, our consciousness is way faster than the speed of light. We can't say with any certainty what would happen if we were able to travel faster than light. We can guess what might happen. We'd start to travel back in time, as some scientists think tachyons might do. Now, what tachyons really demonstrate is the importance of imagination in our ongoing quest to understand the universe. They may not really exist, but if they do, we may have no hope of ever even measuring one. But what our technology cannot capture, our minds can. It follows the claim I make in the Birth Trilogy, that consciousness is the downward causation of the universe, and many, many times faster than the speed of light. All right, let's see. Oh, let's talk about oil, because we're talking about Memorial Day and how expensive it is. And I've ridden my motorcycle several days in the last couple of weeks, saving some, well, major dollars, because my Ford F-150 only gets 20 miles to the gallon, but my motorcycle gets about 50 miles to the gallon. So it's cheaper. It's a little riskier, and I don't like riding in the rain. So, I mean, it's you have to really be alert, because all the cars on the freeway are out there to kill you. That's their mission in life, is to kill motorcyclists. And I have several rules that I've written over the years. Like, if you're a motorcycle rider, pay attention to rule 19A and 19B. 19A says every single car that passes you on the right will pull into your lane. Might do it right in front of you, might do it 100 yards ahead of you, but every single car that passes you on the right will pull into your lane. That's rule 19A. Rule 19B is cars that pass you on the right do not see the motorcycle they just passed. And there you have it. When a car passes you on the right, alert yourself. Oh my God, that guy's going to pull into my lane. It's only a question of when. So slow down a little bit and let that son of a get ahead of you enough where it doesn't run over your front tire. I've had that happen. It's no fun. It is a fact of the road. All right, let's talk a little bit about oil as a weapon. What? We already talked about photons. Yeah, well, yes, a photon has the potential for infinite travel because it's traveling at the speed of light. It is a massless particle, a photon is. It is traveling as a wave. So, realistically, there's no path for the photon from Arcturus to Earth. Okay? There's no path. It leaves Arcturus and arrives here instantly. Not as far as we're concerned. As far as we're concerned, it takes several light years for it to actually reach the rods and cones in our eyes to say, there's Arcturus in the night. But if you were riding in your photon spaceship next to that photon and you were traveling to Earth at the speed of light, which is only theoretical because you actually have mass and the photon doesn't, but distance becomes zero because mass becomes infinity, right? Everything is local, which means at the speed of light, the Big Bang never happened. The entire universe is still the singularity that it once was. Leaving Arcturus to here at the speed of light is instantaneous relative to you. Sorry, John. I can't read all the comments, so I missed your comment from 2 comments above. Let's talk about oil. Oil as a weapon. I have asserted several times over the years that the price of oil is a weapon. And it's commonly used to control peace and manipulate war throughout the world. When oil gets cheap, the constant glut of supply hurts Russia. Why? Because it's most of their gross national product. And you might think it helps America, but actually it only helps Americans. Not necessarily America, but it helps Americans. When the price at the pump goes down, it lowers the cost of goods sold. It is, like a 10% raise to the hourly wage person. He takes more trips, he takes more vacations, he goes out to eat more, and when the price of oil goes up, the first thing that is dropped from the budget is entertainment. which is eating out for most people. When the price goes up, the profits of the oil producers go through the roof, right? Why? Because the fuel at the pump was produced a year ago from oil that was $30 a barrel. The price goes up as soon as someone bangs 2 trash can lids together in the Middle East, or in this case, Ukraine, and all that oil gets paid for as though it was $100 a barrel oil. See? It triples the profits. Now, some might call wars and rumors of wars a conflict of interest for the oil barons. I mean, you'd be right. After all, just ask Liz Cheney. The Bush crime gang goes back more than 80 years, months after FDR turned our republic into a fascist state and began authorizing into existence the agency government. The Bushes linked oil to war. Today, anyone who stands in the way of profiteering and war is an enemy of that fascist state. This is the second biggest reason why the darkest cabal in history hates President Donald Trump. Well, the first reason is because they hate you. When Jake Sullivan announced Putin's Operation Z a couple of weeks before it actually happened, it was a call to arms. Why? Because the global syndicate was about to do what it was about to do had been discovered by a Russian spy. He rushed to the microphone to tell us that what was about to happen was all Putin's insanity. He lied. John McCain and Victoria Nuland violently overthrew the government of Ukraine in 2014. They poured billions into Nazis left over from World War II. They were ready. They are always ready for war. They built railroads, highways, weapons, depots, blockades, walls, and places to store ammunition, and they began building their battalions in Donbass. Within 5 years, they had already killed more than 35,000 ethnic Russians and driven the people living there into their homes in fear of being shot in the head while walking home from the grocery. The plan was to invade Crimea and seize it back from Russia. Crimea has no military to speak of. It would have been an absolute slaughter, bad enough to make the Armenian genocide look like a carnival. Russian spies discovered their plans. If that would have been leaked to the press before Jake Sullivan, a longtime operative of the Biden crime gang, before he got to the camera, public sentiment might have been compromised. This Operation Z that we're in right now, thankfully, is all about the controlling of the narrative. Right now, they control the world through cheating in the election systems. And when that fails, the war begins. The invasion of Crimea was going to happen on March 23rd. Putin knew months in advance and began massing armor and troops on the frozen ground just outside the border in Russian territory. His initial hope was to either make them change their minds or to retreat, and he asked them to several times. Or he was going to take a preemptive strike. And the latter would have been the end of them in seconds, by the way. Russians would have wiped them out. But it didn't change their plans. So on February 24th, Putin ordered his forces to form a 40-kilometer column and aim it at Kiev. It was not moving fast. In fact, it appeared to not move at all. And Putin's strategy was twofold. First, he wanted the Azovs to attack the column. It was a draw play. They did not fall for the ruse. At the same time, Putin's cyber forces were flooding the dark web with chatter about seizing Kiev and killing Zelensky. Even the fake stream news doubted Zelensky would live another week. You remember hearing it on the news. You remember hearing it. Even on Fox News, they said, we don't think that Zelensky will live another week, that Putin has him targeted. They ordered their reinforcements, which, by the way, they made up the second and the third waves of the coming Crimean invasion, to reposition, to protect Kiev from falling. And the instant those forces moved past a certain point to meet Putin's column head-on, Russians destroyed the bridges, the railroads, and the weapons depots. They cut off the first wave Azovs in Donbass. And within 60 days, the Nazis were annihilated. They're gone. The Russians in Donbass are free, and they're safe again. You can even look at the Ukrainian map of the conflict, and you will see that. The global syndicate still had two weapons left. One was blocking Russia from selling oil. And there are three flaws in this strategy, which they will learn a valuable lesson from. Would you like to know the three flaws? Number one is, it is impossible to sanction or embargo a world superpower. All major nations are integrally connected. Trust me, bringing a sledgehammer down on your left foot will make it where you cannot walk. Lesson: you cannot sanction your own left foot. Number two, there are 200 nations who need oil to function. Only a dozen have decided not to buy Russian oil in rubles. Can you say Enron? Russia is now richer and more free of debt than in its 1,000-year history, because even the countries that are buying oil in euros are buying it from countries who bought it from Russia in rubles. Okay? Russia is getting rich. The sanctions don't work. Number three, the narrative is a loser. Putin has an 85% approval rating in Russia and in Egypt and in South Africa, and the list goes on and on. Z is posted everywhere. It's on billboards, it's on tennis shoes, it's on backpacks, it's on painted on the side of cars. People support Operation Z, except in the Dreamland press in America. The global syndicate is extremely powerful, but it has completely lost the support of the human race. Now you know the battle lines. Now you know who is against whom. Now, while Europe shuns Russian oil amid sanctions and expectations of an oil embargo on Russian oil imports, India, China, other countries, they've stepped up their purchases, and they're importing record volumes of Russian crude, and at $100 a barrel, according to data from energy analytics company Kepler, cited by Bloomberg a couple of days ago. So Russia had up to 79 million barrels of crude either traveling on tankers or held in floating storage just last week. That's more than double the 27 million barrels of crude that Russia had seaborne in February, just before Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And they are going to be paid a premium for this oil. Believe me, banks want this money. They need this money. They will not obey the global syndicate's orders to seize it. Before Operation Z, Russia was primarily selling its crude to Europe. But this is no longer the case, after buyers, governments, international trading houses, and oil majors are all avoiding dealing with Russian oil. All the more to give the EU sanctions ban on bank transactions with the biggest Russian oil producers, including Rosneft. Trade majors have now wound down purchases of Russia's oil. But so what? So what? China and India, they aren't shying away from Russian crude, although some Chinese state giants haven't ramped up imports of spot cargoes from Russia despite steep discounts at which Russian oil is selling. if President Donald Trump was still president and we were still making record amounts of crude oil from the known reserves sitting underneath federal lands, we would be able to sell that oil to Europe, and we would be enjoying those windfall profits. And maybe the sanctions against Russia might actually work. But because Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals have done exactly the opposite, they have banned the production of oil from federal lands, which is where the oil is, or I might actually say the oil is where the federal lands are. You get it now, don't you, right? The federal government controls those lands because they are the oil reserves. That's how they control it. That's how they control the country. And the fact that they have cut off our ability to pump from those areas means we can't play. We can only pay. So who's working for who here? Who is really the commander-in-chief? You know, there's really a panic over the handover of America's stockpile of weapons to Ukraine's forces. The messaging is that this was necessary in order to stave off the Russians' onslaught. But everybody sees what's happening, right? There's no way to stop it. Even if you sent all the weapons in the world, it still takes 3, 4, 5 years to train people how to use them. You can't take a guy off the street and put a uniform on him and cut his hair and hand him a Stinger missile and say, here, go shoot an Su fighter jet down. It doesn't work. The computer systems are complex. The firing mechanisms are complex. You can't take a multi-rocket firing machine and drive it 200 miles into the battlefield. It doesn't work. You need maintenance, tank treads, and you need people trained on how to take care of that equipment and take care of the computer firing systems. They don't exist. They can't be trained in time. You can't make an army in 30 days. Cannot be done. Like everything else related to the ease with which Congress and the administration shovels taxpayer dollars overseas, the Pentagon has apparently come up with a solution in the form of more taxes. We need to spend more taxpayer money. That's their solution. The U.S. Army has signed a deal. Wait a minute. Last time I checked, the U.S. Army doesn't sign deals. What the hell are we talking about here? The U.S. Army has signed a deal to buy $687 million worth of anti-air Stinger missiles to replenish stocks that were sent to Ukraine. But wait a minute. What does that mean? Oh gosh, let's take a quick break. You have got to hear this story. We'll be right back after this.
You're never, ever, ever, ever going to feel like doing the things you need to do in order to have what you want. You're always going to need to push yourself. You're always going to need to parent yourself. So what is the net advice on this? What is the bottom line? The bottom line is no one's coming. No one. No one's coming to push you. No one's coming to tell you to turn the TV off. No one's coming to tell you to get out the door and exercise. Nobody's coming to tell you to apply for that job that you've always dreamt about. Nobody's coming to write the business plan for you. It's up to you. And because you're only ever going to do the things that you feel like doing right now or that feel good right now, unless you understand that you've got to parent yourself, you've got to push yourself, you're not going to make your dream.
Extendivite is more than just a heart tonic. Do you have any of these symptoms? Night cramps in the hands and feet. Your arms and legs often go to sleep. On short walks, do your legs get aches and pains? Is your memory worse than it used to be? Ankles that swell late in the day? Has your blood pressure increased lately? If you answered yes to even one of these questions, you may have early warning signs of arterial blockages. Your body is saying that it is time to take Extendivite. These are not the normal signs of aging. They are the warning signs that accompany blocked arteries. Get your Extendivite today. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
For 5,000 years, the world was ruled with wooden ships by one man. 242 years ago, a small group of free men crafted a new nation built on liberty and freedom. Global elites have been fighting to destroy this new nation called America ever since. Based on actual events, Charm of Favor tells the true story of how they corrupted the election system. They infiltrated federal agencies and murdered witnesses, judges, and even presidents to keep from being caught. Now, the largest and wealthiest crime syndicate the world has ever known has been drawn out of the shadows. They have killed hundreds of Americans and recently attempted to assassinate half our congressmen. Still, they escape arrest through an almost supernatural charm of favor. Read Charm of Favor and be prepared to open your eyes to what may lie just around the corner. Charm of Favor is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. And if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever? Or would it be wrong to ask you to come with? Tell me, will you wait?
That's what we're going to talk about. 123 SKG in Foxhole says, where's the money really going? That's a great question. That is the question. You know, we were talking about the U.S. Army signing a deal for $687 million worth of the Stinger missiles to replenish the stocks that are sent to Ukraine. Comments in the chat room like, oh, we're sending all of our old stock to Ukraine, and then we're going to replace them with this new stuff. The trouble is, what does this mean? The U.S. Army signed a deal. The U.S. Army is in the business of selling weapons to warlords? Yes, they are. They have been since the Korean War. The entire third world is flooded with AK-47s. That is a Russian-built weapon. That weapon has killed more civilians than anything ever built. But war is a business. And the generals are powerhouses in the business of war. They are like aircraft carriers in the Navy. They're not alone, walking around with stars on their shoulders. They are CEOs in command of a billion-dollar enterprise. Who is the commander-in-chief? Well, I can tell you that Klaus Schwab and his Davos Gestapo are more in charge than you think. Elon Musk astutely pointed out in his engineer, cut-to-the-chase manner that the real president is the guy writing the words on the teleprompter. That person is actually a syndicate think tank. Oh, they do silly things like call President Trump the MAGA king, but they are also stacking weapons up on both sides to feed the business of war, and they're making trillions in the process. The Stingers are in hot demand, we are told. The shoulder-fired anti-aircraft Stinger missiles made by Raytheon Technologies were in hot demand in Ukraine where they have successfully stopped Russian assaults from the air, and in neighboring European countries who fear they may need to beat back Russian forces. Again, late last month, it was one of the DoD's biggest contractors that alerted the Pentagon that it needs to do something urgent, and it needs to replenish the stocks that are being depleted. Raytheon's Hayes has described that the DoD hasn't bought a Stinger missile in 18 years. 18 years. Who's buying them? Oh, wouldn't you like to know? And some of the comments, or some of the components to make the Stinger missile, they're no longer commercially available. And so we're having to go out and redesign some of the electronics in the missile of the Seeker head. Hayes said it's going to take us a little bit of time to ramp up production and doesn't expect the Department of Defense to place large replenishment orders for Stingers until 2024. And therein lies the window of opportunity, now doesn't it? America will be unable to shoot down a biplane during this window. By the way, Biden will still be president. Within the opening 3 months of Russia's invasion, you're not going to believe this, but the U.S. sent them at least 1,400 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. Yeah, and with Stingers not in production, this is very problematic for America if, the conflict in Ukraine broadens. How many Russian jets and missiles, how many Russian jets and helicopters were shot down with these missiles? A dozen, maybe. Where did the rest of the missiles go? Very astute in the chat room. Very, very astute. Black market sales. They're going precisely where the global syndicate wants them to go. Syria, Yemen, Mexico. Yeah, Mexico. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? The Army recently sent out a request for a next-generation infrared homing surface-to-air missile with plans to award a contract in the second quarter of 2023. It's campaign season. It's going to be full-on MAGA country. The new missiles won't be fielded until 2028. And that might as well be after the freaking apocalypse. The Russians have meanwhile warned that any foreign weapons systems that target Russian assets in Ukraine will mark a severe escalation for which Moscow will hold that foreign country sending those weapons responsible. That would be us. Russia is tracking and destroying or buying those weapons as fast as they are being dropped into Ukraine. Nothing is getting to the Nazis. You understand me? Nothing. This is where it's all headed. The military-industrial complex stays mega rich, while the American people see their savings plummet and devalued. You know that Lockheed Martin will be worth $1 quadrillion by the end of this little war over there? Do you know that? You know how much that is? It's $1,000 trillion. That's more than the gross domestic product of the earth. If we wait another month with Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals in power, and notice I did not say in office, then stopping it is going to be vastly more expensive. All right, I said I was going to talk about human trafficking. I think I'll leave YouTube on. I don't think this is going to be something they're going to be afraid of. Human trafficking is a terrible, terrible affront to humanity. And you know how some things have hidden value, the true value. And the buyer doesn't want you to know that. The seller knows. You don't. You think it only exists in the movies. Human trafficking. It's all about sex, right? Really? Really? You think 3 minutes of pleasure is worth a multi-billion-dollar industry of kidnapping, transportation, assassinations, and blackmail? Come on. You really didn't think that. A person with a recent orgasm is thinking of lots of things besides sex. In fact, they probably wouldn't spend another dollar on it for days or even weeks. No. There's another value. You want to know the facts? These are the facts. A total of 106,090 people were on the waiting list for organ transplants in 2021. And that's according to Health Resources and Services Administration. There's a company out there called Statista, and Statista put together this infographic talking about kidney transplants and other liver and heart and lung, other transplants. Kidney transplants took up the lion's share of these 106,090 people, with 90,483 people awaiting treatment. 17 people die every day waiting for an organ transplant. And another person is added to the waiting list every 9 minutes. And 90% of adults support the idea of organ donation. Only 60% are actually registered as donors. So the pandemic exacerbated the shortage crisis in the U.S. This is according to Penn Medical News. And this is what they reported. They reported that the number of recovered organs, accidents, people dying of other things that left their kidneys intact, it dropped from more than 110 a day on March 6th in the U.S. to less than 60 a day by April 5th. That's a month. In 1 month, it dropped that far. So Peter Reese, who's an associate professor of medicine and epidemiology at Penn, reports, and I quote, organs from deceased donors, they represent a time-limited opportunity, as they must be procured and used right away. They got to be put on ice, and they got to be put in another body within hours. In order to protect the safety of their patients, these centers are now carefully vetting donors to make sure they haven't been jabbed. Yeah, pay close attention, Earth explorers. The most valuable organs on Earth are currently operating inside pure bloods. If you are jabbed, your organs are worthless. If you are pure blood, your organs are premium. And by the way, the magic age is 28. If you are younger than 28 and you are not jabbed, you are the Global Syndicate's prime target. You won't be a soldier, because soldiers are jabbed. You will be among the conquered. You will be among the prisoners of war, just as in China. A healthy liver goes for $160,000. According to the Herald Sun report, a healthy liver sells for $160,000 on the black market. And the business brings an annual turnover of at least $1 billion cash a year. The hospitals that carry out the organ transplants are reportedly found near, where would you think? The detention centers. Yep. Forced organ harvesting has been ongoing for a long time on a very large scale. The Swiss have voted in favor of a new law which would promote an opt-out transplant system, or in other words, when someone dies, the default will be to donate their organs where possible, unless the person had specifically said otherwise. Relatives can also reject the process if they say the deceased person would not have wanted it. The case raises the question once more of whether countries should enforce an opt-in or an opt-out system. In other words, opt-in is you sign the organ donation box on the back of your driver's license. Opt-out means unless you say something, they're going to yank your organs. Now, data from the European Directorate for Quality of Medicines and Healthcare, they show that Spain and the U.S. came out joint top for the highest rates of organ donors in 2020, with 38 deceased donors per million population. In Spain, this high rate is mostly put down to its opt-out system. If you don't say anything, they're getting the organs. The U.S., however, is perhaps more surprising. It has an opt-in system, and it's still 38 deceased donors per million. So this leads to the grim reality that the biggest source of organ donations are people who have been in fatal vehicle accidents. According to the United Network for Organ Sharing, these account for 33% of donations. The fewer people on the roads through the pandemic meant that fewer transplants were available. Despite the fact that Russia has an opt-out system which presumes consent, its numbers of organ transplants are relatively low. Most of these organs coming off the black market are being taken from live people. They're being cut up and sold if they're less than 29 years old. If they're over 29 years old, they're going to work camps, and they're basically building tennis shoes and iPhones. So that's the gist of human trafficking. It is horrendous. It is horrendous. All right, let's talk a little bit about the World Health Organization's so-called treaty. You've heard a little bit about it. Let's delve into the facts really quick so that you can keep it straight in your mind. The World Economic Forum, whose leader is the infamous former Nazi Klaus Schwab. I say former, I don't even know if you can ever be a former Nazi. But he issued a threat, not to the U.S., but to the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, after he refused to sign the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty. You know, the UN has this treaty. Nations are supposed to sign it, or else. He said, let's also be clear. The future is not just happening. The future is built by us, a powerful community. You, here in this room. We have the means to impose this state on the world. That's what Schwab said in a video posted on Twitter. So, Schwab's message came amid remarks made by Bolsonaro on May 15th. He's a strong guy. He's leading the Portuguese nation out of Brazil. And he voiced an explicit refusal to sign the WHO's pandemic treaty, which grants the global health body overarching powers in the guise of addressing public health issues. In other words, they could take over your country because they want to. Brazil will not get into this pandemic treaty. Brazil is autonomous and will not get into this. You can forget that. I've already spoken to our foreign relations cabinet, and that this proposal goes forward, it won't be with Brazil. That's what Bolsonaro said. Moreover, I was the only statesman that didn't adhere to the lockdown policies. I said we had to take care of the elderly and people with comorbidities, and today's studies outside of Brazil especially show that I was right. Close quote. He cited the Brazilian state of Sao Paulo as an example of the utter failure of lockdowns to curb the Wuhan virus. This was not the first time the Brazilian president crossed swords with the global health body, leading to Schwab castigating what he calls the Brazilian strongman. In October 2021, Bolsonaro and WHO Director Tedros, you know the guy in the flowery underwear at the bar, The two sat down during the G21 summit that month, held in the Italian capital of Rome. The Brazilian leader started the ball rolling by asking if there was prior consideration on the global health body's part when it implemented lockdowns and other measures. All over the world, there are people who need to work to feed themselves, he pointed out, adding that the economy will collapse if the lockdowns continue. And in response, Tedros, with the WHO, said he does not see a need for Brazil to lock itself down due to the country's high vaccination rate. Lockdowns were no longer necessary as long as Brazilians continued wearing face masks and washing their hands properly. Blah, blah, blah. Bolsonaro also questioned the safety of the vaccines, saying many who got the second dose are getting sick anyway. In Brazil, many who got the second dose are dying. But according to Tedros, it was possible for vaccinated people to die if they had comorbidities. The vaccine does not prevent COVID, but it does prevent serious illness and death. Whatever. Meanwhile, Schwab mentioned two conditions that were necessary to bring about the Great Reset he keeps trying to sell us. These came amid Bolsonaro's refusal to work with the WHO to advance the globalist agenda. This is what Schwab said. The first one is that we act all as stakeholders of larger communities instead of serving only our self-interest. That's what we call stakeholder responsibility. The second condition is that we collaborate. That's what Schwab said. So speaking in Portuguese, which I can't do, in a translated clip posted to Twitter by Daily Veracy, founder Vince James, President Jair Bolsonaro, warns that the governors of large Brazilian cities, including Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, will issue decrees via the vaccine passport system. Only those who are vaccinated can go to school. Only those who are vaccinated can do such a thing. Those who are not will not. Would you issue such a decree in this regard? Asked Bolsonaro to a member of his government. The man said, no. Either we have freedom or we don't. And the story says that anyone who gives up a part of their freedom for security ends up without freedom and without security. Bolsonaro then warned that if cities accept the vaccine passport, another requirement will come soon, and another, and another. And you know where it will stop then? Population control. The people who most accused me of being a dictator are the ones who are doing it now. That's what Bolsonaro said. If you accept this vaccination passport, soon there will be another requirement. He is exactly right. Currently, about 250 municipalities in Brazil have imposed vaccine passports on their residents. That only covers about 10% of Brazil's population. Bolsonaro's allies have pledged to join his fight against the passports. In Rio de Janeiro, the vaccine passport became required and was almost immediately struck down by a judge who considered it too divisive for a large city. And this judge's decision was reversed, and the vaccine passports are currently reinstated in the city while the issue is taken to the country's Supreme Court, a body regularly accused of being politically polarized with too much power, held by too few judges holding the leftist political views as a power structure. Brazilian politics have grown increasingly divided, just like in America. Bolsonaro recently argued against vaccine passports while at the United Nations, in defiance of United Nations policies. Good for you. Bolsonaro offered to show proof of having COVID-19 antibodies. Bolsonaro has previously said he'll be the last person on earth to be vaccinated. Right on. Second to the last person. I will be the last person. Well, recently I told you about the Ministry of Truth, and we have somebody in Quebec, Canada that's hanging on hold. I'm wondering if they want to talk or if they're just listening. Shall we find out? We've got a couple minutes left. Quebec, Canada, you are on the radio. What is on your mind? That's what I thought. Just wanted to listen. That's all right. I took the opportunity to take a drink. The Ministry of Truth. You remember when I told you not to celebrate too long after the fragilistic firing of Nina Yankowish? I told you the Ministry of Truth would survive, and it would resurface. First Amendment patriots saw what was coming, because the propaganda officer so successful in Ukraine was a hopeless narcissist who thought TikTok was her gateway to fame and fortune. She got fired. People thought they had won. Rand Paul said he was going to block the funding for the Ministry of Truth. And that was it, right? That was it. It was over. Well, the Department of Homeland Security announced last week that its brainchild will now go through a review for up to 75 days. You see, this is where the global syndicate goes into the tunnels beneath Washington to regroup and gather blackmail information on their enemies. Directing the assessment, along with former Deputy Attorney General Jamie Gorelick, is a former Secretary of Homeland Security, Michael Chertoff, who has a detailed history of falling for or waving away security risks or political hoaxes. DHS was loaded with career operatives who cannot be fired by anyone by Obama in the days before he was forced to move out of the White House. And not to worry, he brought another White House. He bought another White House a few blocks away, built a wall around it, and his cabinet still meets on a regular schedule with him. Obama is now worth 1,000 times what he brought to the presidency. His crime gang will survive the Clinton and Biden crime gangs when they go down. And Mr. Chertoff, who, by the way, endorsed Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential election, was asked how he would reconcile supporting Clinton with his knowledge of her mishandling of secret emails, and essentially said it didn't matter in terms of national security. Really? Yeah. The ability to spend an inordinate amount of time chasing small picadillos is a luxury we only have in a world at peace, he said. In a world at war, you've got to focus on the top priority, which is protecting the United States and protecting our friends and allies. Be right back after this.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break. Let me handle it. Don't say that, you stupid son of a bitch. Let me handle it. I was going to show them how good I am. Let me handle it. Let me handle it. This
this is easy. Let me handle it. And I made the mistake. Why would you give up a primetime show? My life was so simple. And then I did it, and look what happened. Now we gotta make it great again. Our country's embarrassed. The whole world is laughing at us. But is there any place better to be than a Trump rally? Look at Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. How would you like to have her as your wife? What kind of a sick, perverted mind does that? Bill Clinton, he's living in fear. Other than that, how are things going? Global pandemic in the middle of the pandemic. Where's your mask? Where's your mask? You have to remember, where's your mask? Where's your mask? Where's your mask? Where's your mask? You have to remember, you're not supposed to get set up. Let me handle it. Don't say that, you stupid son of a bitch. Let me handle it. I was gonna show them how good I am. Let me handle it. Let me handle it. This is easy. Let me handle it. And I made the mistake. And a person who's very low key, depressed does not treat fairly. She's really tough and she's really, really smart. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is real. The Green New Deal surprise, it serves China and China only. You know, really what all this is going to do is help this man out the most. President Xi of China. It's sad. Really, 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 really sad. China. It's sad. Really, 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 really sad.
Let me handle it. Don't say that, you stupid son of a bitch. Let me handle it. I was gonna show them how good I am. Let me handle it. Let me handle it. This is easy. Let me handle it. And I made the mistake. You owe me.
You're now tuned into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Here we go, hour 3. Anyway, I just want to let you know that the Ministry of Truth is not dead. I know Rand Paul said that he would block the funding of it, but there are other ways of moving money around in Washington. You have no idea. This ministry is going to live, and Chertoff is immensely more capable than Nina Yankovic. All right, let's talk a little bit about California. I mean, we could take a whole hour and talk about California, but basically it is falling into the sea. It is falling into the sea. California residents were slapped with tighter water restrictions this week. And it's because state officials killed a plan for a $1.4 billion saltwater desalination plant in Orange County. The State Water Resources Control Board unanimously voted to implement a statewide watering ban for lawns at businesses and commercial properties as residents brace for a prolonged drought. They claim it was the driest drought in 1,200 years. California is facing a drought crisis, and every local water agency in California needs to step up conservation efforts. These conservation measures are increasingly important as we enter the summer months. I'm asking all Californians to step up because every single drop counts. Really? Really? Every single drop counts. Every single drop of water counts. Well, despite the dire drought conditions, placing an increasingly unreliable power grid in jeopardy of periodic blackouts, which they are seeing now, they rejected the latest proposal from a major water developer to construct a desalination plant in Huntington Beach. If this was built, the company behind the project, Poseidon Water, says the plant would make 50 million gallons of drinking water, clean drinking water that doesn't have to travel anywhere except from the plant to the grid or to the piping system on a daily basis. And it would happen by next year. After more than 2-decade effort to appease public officials to greenlight the construction, the State Coastal Commission unanimously turned it down. And they based it on routine concerns over risks to marine habitat and environmental justice. Environmental freaking justice. Yeah, taking 50 million gallons a day from the ocean, which is going to go right back to the ocean anyway. The commission argued the energy-intensive process of desalination presented too much of a coastal hazard while raising local water prices. California is the most populous state, with the 5th most coastline of any nation. It has 12 desalination plants in operation as drought worsened across the western United States. Less than 8% of the western U.S., excluding Colorado and Wyoming, are under normal water conditions. By the way, California forbids using any of the water flowing down from the mountain melt to refill the lakes, like Lake Mead. It's almost empty. Instead, the state mandates that all the water flow unimpeded to the sea for environmental justice. California is truly sliding into the sea. Wisconsin voters took legal action against their state's 5 largest cities on Wednesday over the illegal use of unmanned drop boxes during the 2020 election. I call them Zucker boxes. You would have thought, after the release of the irrefutable proof of Ballots R Us stealing the 2020 election, that someone would have been arrested by now. That's what you would think, right? Hold on a second. I did something really crazy. I hit page down instead of where I wanted to be. Here we go. No one was arrested. Were any of the politicians who paid them, coordinated them, fed them stacks and stacks of counterfeit ballots to be strategically stuffed into Zucker boxes arrested? Any of them? No. Were any of the Zucker boxes removed or destroyed? No. Well, maybe that's happening now. Filed by the Thomas More Society on behalf of voters against Green Bay, Kenosha, Madison, Milwaukee, and Racine, the legal complaints allege that city officials ignored existing state law by implementing the Zucker boxes over the course of the 2020 cycle. In 2020, the cities of Milwaukee, Madison, Racine, Kenosha, and Green Bay made an agreement with the nonprofit Center for Tech and Civic Life to use Zucker boxes to get these cities' residents to vote. The so-called Wisconsin Safe Voting Plan involved $8.8 million of Zucker grants to these 5 cities to target specific populations to vote. It had little, if anything, at all to do with keeping voters safe. During the 2020 election, the CTCL, they call themselves a Civic Center or Civic Tech for Civic Life, received $400 million from Mark Zuckerberg to finance the infiltration of election offices at the city and county level by left-wing activists, and use them as a platform to implement preferred administration practices, voting methods, and data sharing agreements, as well as launch intensive outreach campaign in areas heavy with Democrat voters. According to the report from the Capital Research Center, distributed a total of 31 grants above the $5,000 minimum to Wisconsin cities and townships, with 28 going directly to specific cities rather than counties. Out of these 28 grants, only eight of the recipient localities were won by Trump. 20 of them were stolen with fake Biden ballots stuffed into the unmanned Zucker boxes. Together, these 20 cities received $9 million, or 90% of all the CTCL funds in Wisconsin. By the way, no Republican districts received any Zucker boxes. The Capital Research Center findings also reveal that for grants over $5,000, 9 of the 10 largest per capita grants went to the cities that Biden won, 90% of them. The lawsuits from Wisconsin voters come after the Wisconsin Election Commission refused last month to launch investigations into 5 cities for their use of the unmanned Zucker boxes, despite a January ruling from a Waukesha County Circuit Court judge saying that such boxes and ballot harvesting violate state law and cannot be used in the upcoming midterm elections. But they were. No one had, or to this day has, the authority to have the Zucker boxes welded shut or crushed. If this does not happen, you may as well kiss the 2022 election goodbye. I'm just telling you. You better start showing up with tow trucks, latching onto those Zucker boxes, and taking them to the scrapyard. If it doesn't happen now, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. All right, let's talk about lunch. No, not at this time. I mean no free lunch. No free lunch. There is no free lunch. Unless, of course, you let boys into your female restrooms. Yep. 12 schools have been forced to allow boys into girls' private areas to obtain federal funds for lunches, breakfasts, and snacks. Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals announced this month. A U.S. Department of Education spokesman told reporters Virtual Joe's press releases from several agencies announcing this policy will be followed by formal rulemaking in June. Of course, Virtual Joe never wrote these. He never saw them. He doesn't even remember them. It seems to be playing politics with feeding poor kids, which is really unfortunate, I got to tell you. Because if a school feels like they cannot participate because it's in conflict with their mission or values, if a religious exemption is not granted, they're taking away a program that's feeding low-income kids. Before many schools shut down in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the National School Lunch Program fed nearly 30 million kids every single school day in approximately 100,000 public and private schools and residential care facilities. Under this new demand by Virtual Joe, establishments that accept any federal food funding, including food stamps, must allow males access to female private spaces such as showers, bathrooms, and sleeping areas. Such organizations must also follow protocols such as requiring staff to use inaccurate pronouns to describe transgender people and allowing male staff to dress as women while on the job. Have you ever heard such ridiculous crap in your whole life? I mean, seriously? According to the 1972 Title IX law, and I remember when all this was debated, I watched it. Religious institutions don't have to file any paperwork to be exempt, although they can if they wish. You watch and see what happens to religious schools who don't play ball. No pun intended. Publicly affirming a commitment to sexual reality by seeking an exemption acknowledgement from federal agencies may assist extremist pressure campaigns. the activist group Human Rights Campaign's blueprint for Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals pushed for narrowing religious exemptions for multiple federal regulations and for the administrations to out individuals and institutions who request such exemptions. How narrow? The eye of a needle will look like I-40 compared to the crack you must fall into for girls to be safe from this insanity. That blueprint will be followed just in front of the big guns or the sanctions or the lawsuits and the federal marshals. And by the way, it's not just the Department of Education. The USDA, has a cadre of grants and low-interest loans in its bank. And officials are telling schools to file paperwork to be exempt, although the Title IX law says that that's an option but not required. The USDA confirmed a couple days ago with this emailed statement. Here's what it says. Organizations may request a religious exemption by submitting a written declaration to the Secretary of Agriculture. Agriculture? I thought we're talking about schools. Yeah, agriculture. Identifying the provisions that conflict with a specific tenet of the religious organization. Close quote. Government schools can't be exempted. Period. If you have a girl in a public school, they are exposed to this obfuscation. No sport, no classroom, no bathroom, shower, or dorm room is female anymore. At best, parents and taxpayers can urge school districts to not comply, while inevitable lawsuits over the Biden administration's interpretation work its way through the courts for years. They better be prepared to have their school forced to close until boys can shower with girls. Just ask North Carolina. They lost the NCAA championships worth $200 million because boys had to use the men's bathroom. Even if this regulation is ultimately overturned by one means or another, millions of American children will be forced to eat their school lunches with a side of sexual politics. There's a lot of harm that comes from inflicting this interpretation of Title IX on public schools. A young girl's innocence is lost in seconds, not over a semester or a school year. It must be protected at all costs, or the human race is as good as extinct. Parents have told reporters and school boards that their daughters no longer use the bathrooms or locker rooms at their public schools because they don't feel safe. Many parents are now aware of the horror that school districts are encouraging their students to live as the opposite sex and hide that from their families. A Madison Metropolitan School District policy instructs district employees to assist children at any age to adopt a transgender identity at school upon the child's request without notice to or consent from parents. To conceal from parents the fact that the school personnel are doing this unless the child consents to the parents being told, and even instructs district employees to conceal these facts from the parents. They are currently being sued in a case called Doe versus Madison Metropolitan School District. Some percentage of the school districts want to be told by federal government that they have to implement gender ideology. And if anyone complains, they could say, we're just doing what we're told. Go blame Joe Biden, not me. As Virtual Joe promised to do, while reading the teleprompter during his campaign, his gang of criminals is pushing sexual confusion on as many institutions as it can. This aim has gotten a huge boost from the 2020 Supreme Court decision, Bostock versus Clayton County, an unconstitutional ruling that gives this extremist sexual agenda a legal fig leaf. And by the way, the 5-4 decision clinched by Neil Gorsuch concerns sex differences not in education, in employment. Although applicable employment, it is being corruptly used to cover the genitals of kindergartners. Syndicate soldiers are secretly aroused by the sexualization of little kids. Not only is Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals using federal food subsidies to coerce sexual policies legally suspect in substance, it is also legally suspect procedurally. You see, you can't just go to the press. You can't just go read your teleprompter to a camera. That's not legally enforceable. Just because the president said it doesn't make it law. Only federal regulations that have followed proper legal procedures are law. It doesn't matter to the global syndicate. When it speaks like any monarchy, the word is law. The proposed regulation is not even going to be issued until June. Yet even after the regulation is issued, federal agencies are required to accept public comments for several months. And then they must spend several more months reviewing all the comments and responding, then writing and issuing a final regulation, which is called a final ruling. And then it's going to be challenged in court. Let me tell you something, Earth Explorers. Been through this, done that. The public comment is ignored. And as we have seen throughout the Obama administration, it's true. I wrote several public comments, were never answered. The lawsuits have to be brought by those who have been raped or molested in lower courts, and then work their way through the appeal process, through another expensive appeal and another one, all the way to the Supreme Court. The process takes years. The lives destroyed will be countless, and they will be priceless. You see, we have no representation in that government. That is the pure definition of tyranny. There is a way to stop it. There is a way to remove its power. But the states won't do it. The people do not have the resolve to do it either. Regulations have the force of law, and they cannot be stopped without money or blood. So it appears with this demand that just like with Virtual Joe's so-called vaccine mandate, by the way, that never existed, even though institutions claimed that it did, it didn't. The administration is slow walking the legal procedures required, and they don't care what you say. That delays inevitable lawsuits, which delays justice, which denies justice, which leads to war. It always leads to war. This unpopular extremist gender policy is not legal. They are implemented through fiat and intimidation, and if you speak out against it, you will be placed on an FBI terror list. You will not be able to travel or buy a gun or buy a home. Meanwhile, many elected officials can go and do, can and do sit on their hands and claim it's the court's job to solve the problem. In the meantime, your daughter is in the next stall, is in a stall next to a boy. Your son is wearing a thong and makeup. Given that Biden holds the presidency for more than 2 years, all this means that the American children who don't attend Christian schools are going to be subject to social chaos at school for a long time. Remedies include withdrawing your children from public schools. It's not possible for a lot of people. School boards are refusing to follow regulations that are not legally binding until all court challenges are resolved. Schools refusing to accept federal funding that comes at such a high cost, and state legislatures and Congress passing new laws. As long as Democrats control the committees, that's never going to happen. What we need are courageous parents who share their views with school administrators and school boards. We need courageous parents to run for office and for school boards. We need courageous school administrators and school boards to do the right thing and push back on this perverted interpretation of Title IX, because there are real harms to kids as a consequence. And this damage can never be undone. It's permanent. Kids don't outgrow this kind of harm. Believe me. All right, I've been talking about a proxy war for a while now. The global syndicate is fighting a proxy war. But it is not what you've been told. It's not a proxy war with Russia. It is a war using Russia as the proxy for the real target, which is you. And a new war on terror is brewing, much like its George W. Bush era counterpart. This new campaign is the product of an alliance of politicians and government officials as they seek to gain additional federal powers to fight you. Its enemy is not the Islamic State. It's not Al-Qaeda. It's not foreign threat. Under the direction of Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals, this new effort seeks to end the supposed threat of homegrown, far-right, white supremacist terrorism, whatever the hell that is. In order to further this domestic war on terror, politicians and federal bureaucrats have spread false and exaggerated claims regarding the J6 event, painting it as some sort of armed terrorist insurrection, which it was not. Nobody was armed. Nobody was killed except for Ashley Babbitt. While inflated rhetoric is often the norm, and I just heard Virtual Joe lie out his ass again today, claiming that police were killed. They were not. This specific instance is a calculated act with a specific goal, according to everybody that's looking at this. They want to institutionalize the use of state power to implement the woke agenda. It is a classic example of never let a crisis go to waste. We'll take a quick break, come back with the final segment. Please don't go away. More America Free Radio right after this.
I learned very young from my parents, absolutely, that you don't try to build a wall. You don't set out to build a wall. You don't say, I'm going to build the biggest, baddest, greatest wall that's ever been built. You don't start there. You say, I'm going to lay this brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid. There will not be one brick on the face of the earth that's going to be laid better than this brick that I'm going to lay in this next 10 minutes. Yeah. And you do that every single day. And soon you have a wall. And I think psychologically, the advantage that gives me over a lot of people that I have been in competition with in different situations is it's difficult to take the first step when you look how big the task is. The task is never huge to me. It's always one brick.
Me too. The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. September 2018. Extendivite works in keeping my blood pressure in the normal range. I've been using Extendivite for many years now. May 2018. Great product. I use regularly and I rarely get sick. March 2018. This product has relieved what appeared to be angina pain in my chest and shortness of breath after climbing stairs. I'm quite happy about it. February 2018. My husband, son, and I have been using this product for a few months now, and we have noticed an improvement in our joints and blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
True initiation is an inward journey. It's a spiritual path that is totally inward. It has nothing to do with anything external to you.
I want to determine if the Grand Architect is indeed what I believe it to be, which is the artificial intelligence.
The initiatory path is one of self-discovery and self-revealing. It's not a journey that someone can hold your hand through.
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you through the steps of initiation. Remember, you are divinity.
Step Beyond the Veil with Chris and Sherry Geo.
Fridays and Saturdays.
7 p.m. to 10 p.m.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
Okay, final segment. So glad. I mean, the chat room is just flying all kinds of subjects, and I agree with what's being said in there. One of the let's see. Let me scroll back up just a little bit here because it was important what was being said. Calm down. Just vote like your life depends on it, and we know how the left cheats. We will be stationed strategically. I am signed up to be a poll watcher, and I have friends who plan on camping out at any drop boxes with a camera documented, and that's comfortably numb. 2 is saying that, and I agree with that. You know, if we watch the drop boxes, and you don't have to be there every day, you can spread it out. Get 20 of your friends and park across the street and film everybody that puts a ballot in that box. And call the cops on anybody who puts more than one ballot in there. Get their license number, snap a picture of them, and turn them in. And let's start getting these people arrested real time. And let them know that we are there. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about this using domestic terrorism to fight us. Because, you know, they tried to classify what happened on January 6th as a riot. And it wasn't, because I was there. I was an actual witness. I was there. Democrat politicians and left-leaning media outlets continue to forward a number of false claims and exaggerations about what happened on January 6, 2021. This false insurrection narrative is giving federal agencies authority that would otherwise be seen as an infringement of constitutional rights. They have arrested pretty much anybody who took a selfie in the Capitol for federal crimes. They're keeping people in solitary confinement in a 19th century dungeon without bail and no habeas corpus. The federal crackdown on those present on January 6th has indeed been extensive. As of March 13th, 312 people had been charged in relation to the tourists being invited into the Capitol building by police. In nearly all the cases, it appears that those arrested for being present at the Capitol didn't have anything to do with the violence. The violence and the vandalism was caught on film as being perpetrated by Antifa and FBI agents in disguise, and none of them were arrested. One couple who was present at the rally, who never entered the Capitol, they had their house tossed, their electronic devices seized, and even a pocket constitution taken from them by FBI agents. Many of the prisoners have been brutally beaten by guards. One man had his eye socket shattered and may lose his sight in that eye. His will was not broken, by the way. The report also found that those being held in connection with the J6 events had been placed in restrictive housing and have been subjected to 23-hour-a-day isolation. Many such defendants are being held indefinitely. They're getting stronger every day, not weaker. Prolonged imprisonment is against an American citizen's constitutional rights to a speedy trial. These abuses may very well extend far beyond the events of January 6th and those involved. Let me tell you something. I know you're listening, because you do listen to America Free Radio. I hear you saying my words. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And justice is coming. During the Bush administration, the original war on terror saw the state gain really unprecedented new powers. And this was thanks largely to the 9/11 Commission, which was an independent committee created to recommend actions the government could take to avoid terrorist attacks. Congress also passed something they had been preparing in globalist think tanks for years called the Patriot Act. It created this and granted this national security agency the ability to spy on American citizens. And those pushing the new domestic war on terror are taking their cues from this 9/11 Commission. Evan Hill, who's a reporter for the New York Times, confirmed as much shortly following the January 6th event when he tweeted that a former intelligence official on the PBS NewsHour was saying U.S. officials should think about a 9/11 Commission for domestic extremism, and that is the unselect committee on the January 6th events led by Liz Cheney. And I already read to you in the past words of retired Army General Stanley McChrystal. He's the former head of the Joint Special Operations Command in Iraq, as well as the commander of all U.S. and allied troops fighting in Afghanistan. And he voiced similar sentiments in comparing the two wars on terror. Here's what he said. I did see a similar dynamic in the evolution of al-Qaeda in Iraq, where a whole generation of angry Arab youth with very poor prospects followed a powerful leader who promised to take them back in time to a better place, and he led them to embrace an ideology that justified their violence. This is now happening in America, said McChrystal. He hates Donald Trump. He hates you. January 6th Commission is not independent. It's focused on making speaking out against the Democrats a felony. Notice I did not say speaking out against the government. The Democrats want to be able to do that when Republicans take over the majority, which will be in November if we can protect our election process from fraud. In fact, the FBI's most recent hate crime numbers show that white people are vastly underrepresented among hate crime offenders, about 25% less represented. These increasingly vague definitions of what makes up a terrorist also been adopted by high-ranking military officials in the Pentagon. You want to know what they are? You want to know what the racist guidelines of critical racist theory are now? Saying all lives matter. Or make America great again. Yep. Or color blindness. Or denial of white privilege. Or anti-immigration policies, building the wall, cutting down on illegal immigration, American exceptionalism, meritocracy, celebration of Columbus Day, claiming reverse racism, English-only initiative. Yes, all these are guidelines to label you a terrorist under critical racist theory. So Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals asserts that terrorism is the threat that gives them the ability to go beyond, to actually counter constitutionally and start freezing free speech and start freezing freedom of association and other things. Indeed, the label terrorism gives government officials more authority. One senior Justice Department official said, "The legal definition of domestic terrorism serves to expand a lot of authorities we can use, possibly including nationwide search warrants, expanded law enforcement access to education and tax records, and also harsher sentencing." Everybody was given a glimpse of that. June 2021, you remember that? When the National Strategy for Countering Domestic Terrorism report was released by Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals. It detailed plans to confront racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists who promote superiority of the white race. You remember that? The national strategy goes on to say that the U.S. government will address online terrorist recruitment and mobilization to violence by domestic terrorists through increased information sharing with the technology sector. In other words, the government's going to enlist the aid of the big tech companies, companies well known for labeling mainstream conservative opinions as extreme forms of hate speech. In the guise of protecting us against domestic terrorism, they're going to work to counter mis- and disinformation with the social media companies. No? You know? That's literally right there, crossing that First Amendment line. They're trying to outsource it. Frankly, I've been looking to put one of those blue helmets in my trophy case. All right, let's talk a little bit about the end game here. No one person has covered this new domestic war on terror more extensively than us right here at America Free Radio. Nobody. The aim of this new war on terror is to shut down the speech of everyday Americans by loosely applying labels such as extremist and white supremacist. You're hearing the words right now. And their real aim is to criminalize that which should not be criminalized. Speech, association, protests. I mean, how more American can you get than protests? Opposition to the UN or the World Economic Forum. Americans that I speak to and that I listen to, they're kind of in panic mode when that happens. You know, people are willing to acquiesce to anything claimed necessary to stop that threat. You know, as the first war on terror, still going strong 20 years later, decisively proved. Don't be fooled by the fake stream media Earth explorers. These politicians, the NGOs, the military personnel, other government bureaucrats, they're creating an anti-terrorism campaign, and it's aimed at targeting white supremacist extremists. It began in earnest right after the January 6th event. Mark my words. It aspires to extend much further. While the prevalence of white supremacist groups wane, the definition of white supremacy continues to broaden, with an increasing number of mainstream conservative and even classically liberal ideas becoming identified as extremist. Americans need to prepare themselves. Otherwise, civil rights, God-given rights, liberties, other American freedoms, they may soon become a distant memory. And like I say in my books, in Alienated Nation, in the Birth Trilogy, in Charm of Favor, once these freedoms go away, the world will be back in the control of the same hands that controlled it for 5,000 years before we declared our independence. This is the last stand for liberty and freedom right here, today, in America. If we are defeated, they will likely never exist again. And that's what I'm talking about. This Memorial Day weekend is traditionally a time when we celebrate the fallen. The ones who were recruited or drafted, put into a green uniform, sent to a camp to practice killing, and then being put on a boat or a plane and sent to another country to put into practice what they learned. And though they smiled behind that cold beer in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, or at Lackland Air Force Base, when they jumped out of the airplane or they crawled out of the personnel carrier or marched into the field, things changed. The bullets were real. Their friends dying next to them, that was real. Them having to look down that barrel at another human being and mentally turn that human being into a number or a monster or an animal to justify squeezing that trigger and blasting the life out of that person. One after the other, after the other, after the other. So they could get home. So they could return home. And when they came back, the pain they felt from following that order, it never goes away. Even if you just look down the sights with a round in the chamber, never fire the bullet, your life will change forever. That dream will haunt you for the rest of your life. Why? Why? Because some politician decided that that other nation didn't deserve to have citizens alive. And maybe it was to protect people, yes, if warlords are coming in and doing undue slaughter. But we invade another nation, we send our troops into other nations, and we kill their people, and then our people come home. We've never been invaded. We've never been bombed. We've never had tanks or planes or even ships off of our coast shelling us, ever. Not since the Revolutionary War. We're getting close. You know it. I know it. We remember battles to keep this in perspective, like Fort McHenry. Fort McHenry, the British were off the coast. Their ships were anchored. Fort McHenry was within gun range, and it was outgunned. It was outmanned. And American prisoners of war were on those ships. And American officers went out to negotiate. And the naval commander said, if you will just take that flag down at Fort McHenry, just lower the flag and give up, we'll let you live. And they said, no, the flag's not coming down. So he said, well, I'm going to tell you, in an hour, my ships are going to start firing on that fort. And they're all expert marksmen. And we're going to annihilate it. It's not going to exist anymore if you don't change your minds. And they didn't change their minds. And so they began firing. And as nighttime came, round after round after round pounded at that flagpole. And they had several direct hits. Every single time the smoke cleared, that flag was still standing. Ships were frustrated. They felt like, firing it at Luke Skywalker with all those ships, and then he was just standing at the end. I think you got him, and then he was still standing there. But from the Fort McHenry side, something else was happening. Something else was happening. Because the men held that flagpole up. And as the shells would come over and splatter those men into a red mist, and that flagpole would start to tip over, someone would run up and grab that flagpole and hold it up. And when they were blasted out of existence, another person came, and another, and another. And when the sun came up, that flag was still there. That is Memorial Day. Because if those men had let that flag touch the ground, we would be speaking British today. There would be no America. That's the kind of courage. Why did they do it? Why did they care about that flag? Because that was freedom. That was liberty. That was us declaring God gives us rights, not King George. And now here we are. And we have a tyrant who has seized control of our White House, stolen an election. And because the way our laws are set up and our Constitution is set up, we don't have a mechanism for reversing that. We don't have a way to put President Donald Trump back in office. It doesn't exist. We would have to destroy the Constitution to make that happen. We never had a remedy for cheating. Cheating has been going on in American elections since the Civil War. Ballot stuffing is a regular activity of the Democrat Party. They have been doing it for over a century. The Democrat Party was formed in 1848. And ever since then, it didn't take them 5 years. It didn't take them 5 years after the DNC was formed to put together the Tariff of Abominations and start choking the southern states to death, blockading their exports, blockading their imports, forcing confiscatory taxes on them to pay for the opulence of the few northern states, although they had most of the population. The South said that's enough. Enough is enough. They filed their grievances. They were not heard in Congress. They tried their best constitutionally to do what needed to be done. The Constitution would not allow them to protect themselves or to preserve their freedom and liberty or to get out from underneath taxation without representation. So they quit. They filed the same grievances that the nation once filed against King George, and they quit. They seceded. They became their own nation with their own money and their own railroad and their own economy. And they were trading with other countries, France and Russia. And that was it. And President Lincoln was such a poor statesman, he could not put the nation back together again. So he destroyed them. He marshaled his army, and he went with a scorched earth policy, and he burned their towns and their cities to the ground until they gave up. He forced them back into the Union. And that's why the United States exists today. Now, some would argue that it's a different United States than it was prior to 1865. Prior to 1865, we were bankrupt. We were out of business. The South had broken the North. And so, forming a corporation, now they were no longer a coalition of states. They were a federal government, which controlled all the states. And then by the time FDR came into power, the regulations formed this new agency government, which we now suffer under, the USDA, the FDA, the EPA, it just goes on and on and on. 650 different agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations that run our country. We have no representation in that government. We have no lawmaking, a debate or right in that government at all. They can do and say and demand anything they want. And there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing. So when the election of 2020 was stolen, we didn't have a way to fix it. There was no mechanism for saying, wait a minute, we have all this evidence. We need to set this election aside. This is in conflict. We need to decide this. Something went wrong. We don't have a mechanism for that. And now look where we are. Look where we are less than 2 years later, barely 18 months later. We're bankrupt. Our babies are starving. Our gas prices have tripled. Our homes are tenuous. If you haven't bought a home by now and you've got under a 700 credit rating, you're probably not going to buy a home in your lifetime. You're not going to buy a new car. Those are out of reach for you now. Why? Because Virtual Joe says so. Because the global syndicate is writing what he's reading off of that teleprompter, writing the executive orders, which, by the way, he's signed more of them than all presidents combined, and he's only been in office for 18 months. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse before it gets better. We got to remember this Memorial Day and don't give up. Keep listening to America Free Radio. I will keep you informed. I promise you. They're never going to stop me. Never going to stop me. Listen to the other free speech advocates that are out there. X22 Report, Red Pill, Just Human, the Duran. I mean, listen to these guys. Listen to what they say. And, of course, tune into America Free Radio because we tie it all together for you. My name is Brooks Agnew saying, peace, Earth Explorers. Now go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little every day. And before long, you will have saved the planet. Now go and do. And have a great day tomorrow, your day off from work. Be good to one another. We'll see you Wednesday night at 8 o'clock.